I've been 3D printing on this channel for about 3.5 years now, and over that time I've tested like loads of different printers and printed countless models. And just like your monkey brain who's about to click off this video to click on something else, my monkey brain struggles from taking the 3D print from a print to an actual completed product. Unless it's terrain, obviously, because I had a deadline and I had to, but you know, we're all Warhammer players, we only do something if we have a deadline, and otherwise it'll sit on the shelf forever, like all of this here. But I've been sent this, the Qiditech X Plus 3, a competitor to other brands out there that are big washing machine style 3D printers that are insanely fast. But I've printed a lot, and today I want to show you how I'm going to finish this print, stop it looking like it's been 3D printed and look like it's been cast with a secret hack. You love good hacks. But before that, we're gonna test the machine. For a little guidance on what this machine is, it looks like a washing machine, and for good reason. This has an all-metal direct drive extruder, a heated chamber, and is designed for printing anything from PLA to ABS to PETG to anything you can think of. What's known as a core XY machine. Rather than the bed being thrown backwards and forwards and what's called a bed slinger, the X and Y axis of the machine actually stays in the top of the machine and the bed drops down instead of the XY going down and making its way back up. And it's using a firmware known as Clipper. This is loads of jargon, but just hear me out. This machine can respond a lot faster and run a lot more actions compared to something that's running Marlin or RepRap, which again, most previous machines or older machines are probably running, such as like Ender 3 or Ender 3 equivalents. This thing can go fast, and also the bed goes up and down and rather than forward and backwards. It's very, very fast, being able to move at 500 millimeters per second, but the entire frame is all metal, so this is like a really chunky piece of kit. And because it's moving really fast with all that chunky gear around it, it has what's known as input shaping, which makes it start sounding like it's about to take off like a plane. But this is to essentially counterbalance any vibrations that the machine would cause, and it'll compensate that whilst it's printing to avoid like layer shifts or discrepancies in the print surface. It can print fast and it can print big because it's 280 by 280 by 270 millimeter print volume compared to a standard 220. But my one complaint about this machine, whilst we have got a nice test print off it, is the filament holder is on the back of the machine, and the machine is quite heavy. So the first thing we do, we've got a 3D printer, we're going to hack it, we're going to print this spool holder that goes actually to the side of the machine, so it's going to be a lot easier to access because I don't fancy spinning this machine around all the time. And what I should say, the spool holder actually comes with, you know that stuff you're not supposed to eat, the silica gel? It actually comes with a box, like a dehumidifying box to put the spool in there, because moisture can affect materials you're trying to print with, especially funky materials like ABS or higher. So this machine actually has a box, like a Tupperware box, like airtight box to put in with silica gel to keep the material dry. But what are we going to print? Well, I'm actually going to go on to gambody.com, but Gambody does a whole host of different types of like mechanically perfect 3D prints of characters, assets and things from games. Download Clank from the Ratchet & Clank series. I know this is really random, but Ratchet & Clank 2 Locked and Loaded was one of my favorite games growing up. So I'm going to download this one. It is quite expensive, but it's probably going to be worth it. And this machine can smash it out fast. It's using Qiditech Slicer, which is essentially like a version of Prusa Slicer. This is kind of like a master version of it, and with their own settings already preloaded. So I'm actually using the basic settings for PLA and just using organic supports because all my other slicing software doesn't have organic support, so I wanted to try it out. Oh yeah, oh yeah. This has literally just finished. It's still hot. That looks great. That looks so good. That looks so good. Now, I've got everything printed. This is the hard bit. This is the wall now. It's time for sanding. And sanding is something that it makes and breaks projects for me, because sanding makes things look amazing, but it is so time intensive. And it's one of those things that you've kind of got to do. And if you don't do it right, it won't look good. And then you won't you won't progress because you'll be like, well, there's layer lines, I can't be bothered to sand it again. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to sand it off with sandpaper, and I've got a palm sander as well, so I'm going to give that a go. But then I've got an idea to maybe skip a few final steps, but bear with me. First, we've got to sand. This is the hard bit. It's the mentally draining bit. That's the only reason why. But I put some headphones on, and I just went at it. I went with 2 types of sandpaper, and then I went over with the lightest grain, but it's also on the palm sander, so it was much easier to do. And thankfully, because of the print quality, the layer lines aren't too bad. There's just a few seams, really, that really need to get rid of. Now, my secret hack for smoothing prints is kind of a bit of an experiment, but it's to, once I've sanded it, is to wipe it down with acetone. Now, acetone vapors are used all the time to smooth out ABS prints because the vapors react with ABS really easily, but they don't react very well with PLA, which is what this is printed in. But if you take warm acetone, please don't heat it, it's highly flammable. I'm doing it the old-fashioned way over a pan of hot water. Please don't heat it over a flame. But I've taken warmed up acetone on a cloth, and I'm actually just wiping down the print. What this is going to do is it's going to pick up any dust from the sanding, and it's actually going to melt the surface, only the outside layer. This means all of our sanding grains and stuff like that will hopefully be melted away, only ever so lightly, and it's not a quick task either because I'm essentially buffing every piece. But by wiping it down with the acetone, the dust that is on there is melting and helping fill the gaps, and I'm just like smoothing out the surface even more without having to go in even higher grit of sandpaper to get that really like mirror finish. And then once I've done all that, I'm getting it on some shot glasses so I can prime it with filler primer. And make sure you buy enough filler primer because I didn't, and there's some bits that I didn't, okay? And once I've gone over with the filler primer, let it dry for a few hours, and then we're going to sand it again, especially where there's any marks that we can still see, any layer lines, any scuffs, etc. The next step is painting, so we're going to put parts very similar together or similar color that can go together now, so it makes it easier to paint later. And I also want to go one step further. I bought these really cheap motion sensor lights off Amazon. They're like magnetic back, you stick them in your cupboards and stuff like that. But I kind of figured how cool it would be if every time we went up to see Clank, we waved at Clank and then he lit up. So that's where these come in. Now, they are a little bit big to fit inside his head, so I'm going to have to do some deconstruction. And the main problem is the battery pack is way too large. It won't fit inside his body, so we can run the cables up through into his head. So I'm going to print a little battery holder and then decompile this and then reconnect it up in his chest. Who says being an electronic engineer for 8 years was a waste of time? Oh, they said being a YouTuber was a waste of time. Anyway, we deconstructed the light. I changed the cable to make them longer. I ran the cable from his head to his body, and then I tested the new battery pack. And then it was time for the real painting. We primed it in Halford's grey car primer to do the final layer before we actually add matte black, followed by Colour Forge Steel Forge Silver. And whilst I want to paint this, I don't want to be painting it for days and days because it'll never get done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start building it now, and then I'm going to do a little bit of airbrushing with some Dark Star paint. So I'm going to be using pewter on the high points to get some shiny highlight bits on top. And then I'm just airbrushing blue steel to paint the darker metals. Again, I don't want to be here forever. So the only paintbrushing I'm going to be doing is putting some black wash. You could use a black wash, or you could like mix black paint with some water to put into the recesses to add definition, and that is pretty much all the painting I want to do. But to add a little bit of pizzazz to Clank before we finish him off, I've printed his eye lenses in green resin, and I printed his little noggin doggy little bell on the top noggin in clear red resin as well. You could do this in PLA if you really wanted to, and then you stick it all together, and this is what you're left with. We've got a Clank. Look at it. I'm so chuffed with him. Now, the motion sensor comes with the little filter on, like, to stop it being so sensitive. And I was like, with the lenses, that should do the same thing. But because I stuck it perfectly in the back of his head, the motion sensor isn't amazing. But see, if you shine him with the light, sometimes it works. You see, if you shine him with some light, he wakes up. However, we've got a completed Clank that lights up. this has been a really fun project. Like, using the acetone to try and finish off the print was super cool, but just using a really nice printer was probably the main thing. But it is a great file. I really enjoyed it, and I've left a link to Clank down in the description. But what do I think to the Qiditech X Plus 3? I think it's a great printer. It's really fast. It's quite big, but it also means it can print something that's quite big, and it can print it really, really quick. Now, I'm probably underutilizing it because I've only printed with PLA, and it has so much capability printing other materials, which I just don't use really. But what materials should I try in the machine? Let me know down in the comments. I know I see a lot of people talk about loads of different products, but I don't really know what the benefits are over just printing in plastic. But yeah, I got my own Clank, a finished 3D printed product to put on the shelf, and sometimes it'll light up. So thanks for watching. Thanks so much to my members. There, Clank says hello. If you want to support the channel, you can become a member for as little as £1.99 a month. I stream every single Monday, Wednesday and Friday. And thank you so much for watching. Thank you to Qiditech and Z-Banks for sponsoring, and otherwise have a great day.